What's up guys, Tommy Bowie here from Movie Rewind, and today I'm going to be giving my opinions on everything film related. So without further ado, let's get into it. So my last video was a 500 subscriber special, which once again, thank you so much for 500 subscribers. And I decided to do a video where I gave my opinions on Doctor Who, just like basic questions such as my favourite Doctor, favourite series, worst series, etc. But I really enjoyed doing that kind of video. I thought the format was really good, I thought it was interesting, and I thought it gave you guys a chance to get to know my views on certain things. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to do another one, but this time I'm going to do it on all things film related. Now, some of you might not know that this channel started off as a movie review channel, and while we've gone away from that in recent years, I still care a lot about films. I go to the cinema quite regularly, so I thought, you know what, I'm going to do this video where I give my opinions on all things film related, so I hope you enjoy. First question I'm going to ask myself is, what is the best film I have ever seen? Now, for me, it has to be Joker. Released in 2019, directed by Todd Phillips and starring Joaquin Phoenix. This is a film which every time I watch it, something new I appreciate in it. The first time I saw this film, it was Joaquin Phoenix's performance. The second time I saw it, it was Todd Phillips directing. The third time I saw it, it was the score. This is a film which is dark. There is hardly any optimistic moments throughout this film. It's one man's descent into madness. And I think the reason this film was quite controversial when it was released is because of how realistic it is. It reflects society. The idea that none of the important rich people in the world truly care about the average man. So this descent into madness which Arthur Fleck goes through, in which he becomes the Joker, it's a very human story and a very realistic story. I have to admit, the best part of this film, it has to be his appearance on the Murray Franklin show. That entire sequence, the Joker was born there, and I can't wait for the sequel. It looks like it's going to be a very interesting sequel. But if I had to pick a film which I have no flaws with whatsoever, it would have to be Joker. I actually remember the second time I saw it in cinemas, I came out and it deeply affected me. I was really affected by the film the second time, and I think that just shows how powerful a film this is. My favourite film. Now, this is a film which isn't necessarily the best film I've ever seen, but if I had to pick a favourite film, it would have to be Spider-Man from 2002, directed by Sam Raimi, starring Tobey Maguire. This is the definition of a comfort film for me. If ever I'm feeling low, I will put on this film and be transported into a world of heroes and villains, and I love every single second of it. This is the perfect origin story for Spider-Man. For me, Tobey Maguire is iconic as Peter Parker and Spider-Man. Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin. They should never do Green Goblin on the big screen without Willem Dafoe. He is iconic in that role. Such a great performance. And the fact that a few years ago people were starting to say that Willem Dafoe, you know, he weren't that good as the Green Goblin. He's a bit cringy, a bit overrated. But then No Way Home came along and he proved just how good he was. And in this film, he's amazing. What I love about Spider-Man and Sam Raimi's interpretation of the character is it's not afraid to be a comic book film. A lot of modern comic book films seem to be afraid of being too outlandish in terms of being a comic book. They like to take it seriously, be a bit more realistic. With this film, it's set in a comic book world, and it's brilliant. The pacing of this film is excellent as well. The time flies by, and I'm actually going to see this film in cinemas. It's been re-released for a short stint in the UK, and I will be going to see it in cinemas this Friday, and I have to admit, I am so looking forward to it. The idea of seeing my favourite film in cinemas is just something which words cannot explain how excited I am for that right now. The worst film I've ever seen. Jaws the Revenge. Now, the Jaws franchise shouldn't have been a franchise. You've got Jaws, which is a masterpiece. You've got Jaws 2, which is a decent horror slasher film. You've got Jaws 3D, which is so bad it's funny, but you can appreciate that a lot of effort went into the 3D effects. And then you got Jaws the Revenge, which the whole concept of this film is stupid. The shark is out for revenge on the Brody family because they've killed so many of his mates. What the hell? Sharks do not have feelings, and this shark travels from New England to the Bahamas. He follows the Brodies to the Bahamas to take his revenge. There are so many stupid moments in this film. Michael Caine is in this film, and you can tell he doesn't give a shit. And he said, you know, since that he didn't care, he was just in it for the money, which is fair enough. I think if I was on this film set, I'd be in it for the money as well. No way could you take this film seriously. And the way the shark dies is one of the funniest deaths I've ever seen. He gets impaled by the boat and blows up. I am not joking. Literally blows up. And then they just replay footage from the original Jaws film because they were obviously running out of money by that point. Jaws the Revenge is a shocking film. It was the nail in the coffin for the Jaws franchise. And the shark roars in this, and everyone said it. Sharks don't have vocal cords, so this shark shouldn't be roaring like a fucking lion. Jaws the Revenge, it is honestly a film which I can't even watch and take the mick out of it because it just infuriates me how bad a concept this film was. The best horror film I've ever seen. Now, horror films are actually an important part of my life. I go to the cinemas regularly to see horror films, and I think with horror films, they're either hit or miss. You either have really good ones, or you have some of the ones produced by Blumhouse, which are often just cash grabs which rely on cheap jump scares and gore. But for me, the best horror film I've ever seen is Scream. Released in 1996, directed by Wes Craven, this is a film which reinvented the slasher genre because it incorporated a lot of horror parody elements as well as murder mystery elements as well, and I think it works. The cast in this is amazing. Wes Craven as a director, he is great at directing horror films, so obviously there's nothing wrong with the directing in this film. Ghostface, he's an iconic killer. The opening to this film, featuring Drew Barrymore, is amazing. I would say the most iconic sequence in horror film history. And for me, Scream is a very rewatchable film, which I think is a great thing. I think if you watch any film and you're able to rewatch it again and again and not get bored, that's the sign of a good film. I think because it is a murder mystery, you really can watch again and again to try and see if there's clues that you missed, to try and connect the dots together. And the fact that the franchise is still going to this day, it just shows what an impact Scream had on the horror genre. An underrated film. Now, this is a film which I think doesn't get the recognition it deserves, and for me, it's Gremlins 2, The New Batch. Now, this might be quite an obscure choice. This came out in the 90s. It's the sequel to the incredibly successful and culturally iconic Gremlins, but it didn't actually make the massive box office success which Warner Bros had hoped for. It underperformed at the box office, and for many years I feel like people just kind of writ it off as a cash grab sequel which isn't as good as the original. But for me, I have always loved this film, and I think now more than anything this is an underrated film. Gremlins 2 is a spoof film, and I think that's what a lot of people don't understand about it. This is supposed to be a parody of the original Gremlins film. There are so many references throughout this film to the original Gremlins film, and loads of questions asked like, well, hang on a minute, if they eat after midnight but then they cross time zones in a plane, like how does that apply? So there's all these great moments in it which I think work really well. The Gremlins steal the show in Gremlins 2. There is more Gremlin scenes in this film than the original. The horror elements of it are toned down a bit and replaced with more slapstick humour, but that's not a bad thing. It's still pretty dark humour. I think Gremlins 2 deserves a lot of credit because they could have just done a lazy sequel. They could have gone down the route that many franchises do, like the Jaws franchise, I suppose, where they just get lower and lower. But Gremlins 2 was something different. Joe Dante wanted full creative control to give us something different, and I think especially in this day and age, it deserves a lot of credit for actually trying to do something different. The exact opposite to an underrated film is an overrated one, and for me, an overrated film is Spider-Man Far From Home. Released in 2019, this came hot off the heels of Avengers Endgame, and if you listened to the critics and the majority of audiences, this film was universally loved. But for me, even when it was released, I was lukewarm about it. Now, this is going to be a controversial statement, but I think Far From Home, it's a decent Marvel film, it's a bad Spider-Man film. And the reason for that is because it focuses too much on Iron Man's legacy. And I get it. This film was released a few months after Avengers Endgame. So obviously Endgame was a massive thing. But Spider-Man is a great character in his own right. And I don't think this film did very well with the Spider-Man character. I don't think Peter Parker really goes through a lot in this film. You know, the only thing that happens is he does get together with MJ. And don't get me wrong, Tom Holland and Zendaya have some great chemistry. And I wanted them to get together throughout this film. But I just think that this film, it just feels like he's Iron Man's apprentice. He's the heir apparent to the Tony Stark throne. And I just don't think that's necessary whatsoever. Having said that, this film isn't all bad. I think it's overrated, but it's not bad. Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio, I was concerned about his casting at first. I didn't know if he could pull it off, but he did. And I'm not ashamed to say that the twist in which it was all fake did get me. And I'm a massive Spider-Man fan, so that shouldn't have got me. I should know Mysterio is an illusionist, it's all smoke and mirrors. But it did get me. And the fight scene between Spider-Man and Mysterio in the warehouse, that was amazing. The final fight scene, which just involved Spider-Man taking down loads of drones, shooting at him, it weren't as creative as the warehouse fight scene. So for me, this is the Spider-Man film which I can't understand why so many people like. Guilty pleasure film. Now this is a film which I would even admit is not very good, but I still have a fun time watching it. And for me, it has to be Eight-Legged Freaks. Now released in the early 2000s, this is a B movie which features David Arquette and a group of townsfolk escaping giant spiders which have grown to massive size due to toxic chemicals. Very simple plot, very simple film. This is a fun film. The spiders are hilarious. They're not scary at all, you know. I mean, just listen to the voices, you know. They're cartoonish. And this is a horror comedy. And I think it's great. And I've heard a lot of people say, oh, this film is rubbish, you know, it's not scary, that it's stupid, it's been done before. But you know what? I don't care. Eight-Legged Freaks is a very funny horror film. And it's one that I will always rewatch around the Halloween period to get me in the mood. And actually, now that I've seen Sting, which was released earlier this year, which is another film featuring a giant spider, I will probably watch Eight-Legged Freaks and Sting back to back on Halloween, because I think they're two films which really you can watch together. And as someone who suffers with arachnophobia and is terrified of spiders, that's going to be a very fun night. The best film trilogy of all time, in my opinion, is the Indiana Jones trilogy. Now I know there's been 5 Indiana Jones films, but for me, Crystal Skull and Dial of Destiny, yeah, let's not talk about them. I'm on about the original 3, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Temple of Doom, and The Last Crusade. I love all 3 of these films. Raiders of the Lost Ark is the perfect action film. You know, it's so well paced. It is a joke. Harrison Ford is great as Indiana Jones, and Steven Spielberg's directing is amazing. Temple of Doom, underrated, darker, different, the complete opposite of Raiders, which I think is a good thing. And The Last Crusade, it's got just such a great story to it. Plus, you've got Sean Connery as Henry Jones, and he is just amazing in this film. So for me, the Indiana Jones films, they are the epitome of action adventure films. You know, all the set pieces are amazing. It's all practical, which is great. I love practical effects. The villains are iconic, especially the Nazis. Indiana Jones is at his best when he's facing the Nazis. And for me, these are just films which are fun. You can just watch them and appreciate the filmmaking. Steven Spielberg is one of the world's most talented directors, and I think the Indiana Jones films are a great sign of that. So for me, the Indiana Jones trilogy is always something I enjoy rewatching. Now, my favourite film franchise. Now, this is a section in which I'm talking about an entire film franchise, like the Marvel Cinematic Universe or the DC Extended Universe. But for me, it has to be one of the oldest film franchises, and that is the James Bond film franchise. Now, this is a franchise which has run for over 60 years, and it has been iconic throughout those 60 years. I actually remember I did an open day at a university near me, and they actually did a history course on the James Bond films. You could actually, because they say that James Bond is actually a great way of looking through history, because it's been going for so long. You can really see how the world changed and evolved through these films. And that just got me thinking about how great James Bond is as a film franchise. I would say Bond has had more hits than misses. For me personally, Pierce Brosnan's era is highly underrated. I love the 90s Bond. I think they're great. But each James Bond actor brought something different to the role. Each film is different and unique. I don't think there's a single James Bond film which is the same. You know, you'll get something out of watching each one, whether that's good or bad. And the fact that it's still going after 60 years and people are still looking forward to the next one, that just shows how great a franchise it really is. And the final question, I decided to have a bit of fun. What was the first film I saw in cinemas? Now, it was back in 2003. It was Finding Nemo. I was very lucky. I grew up during the golden age of Pixar when they were releasing hit after hit. But I still remember going to see Finding Nemo. I remember I sat on my mum's lap throughout the film. I still remember the opening with the barracuda killing Nemo's mum. And I think that was very dark for a kid's film. But it didn't do me any harm. I think when I hear people saying now that, oh, things are too dark for kids, you know, we need to make it more PC, we need to make it lighter, think of the children. No, I don't think that is the case, because kids need to know about life issues, and films are a great way for kids to learn that kind of stuff. So yeah, Finding Nemo, first film I ever saw in cinemas, and I still watch it to this day because it's one of Pixar's best films. So thanks for watching, guys. I really do hope you enjoyed this video. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe in order to receive great and maybe even improved quality content in the future, and I will see you in another one. See ya!